I'm Evan Pickworth from Business Day. I'm here at Routledge Modise with the head of Africa, Rajen Ranchhoojee. Rajen, we've got a lot of challenges in the energy sector at the moment. We've had the Medupi power plant delayed by Eskom. We've also got a massive initiative to launch integrated resources in South Africa and alternative energy, which is critical to benefit our power supply, which, as we know, is nowhere where it needs to be. Can we talk a little bit about the high costs, though, that are holding back some of these projects as we head into round three?
Well, I think it's important to understand in the context when we look at the cost of renewable energy, and the costs certainly have come down even within this program from a round one solar photovoltaic price of in the region of R2.85 per kilowatt hour down to R1.40 per kilowatt hour. The capital cost is not a cost that's been borne by the government, it's one that's been borne by the programs. And what the difficulty we find at the moment is the competition, and that's where the costs come in. The increased bidding costs are meaning that the tariffs are having to be driven higher. And with those tariffs being driven higher, that's going to take a little bit longer to reach the parity. So that's the $2 million that we talk about for bidding costs. It's an overhead cost which we could do without, and having done without that, we would basically see cheaper costs coming in on the tariffs.
The feed-in tariff rates also seem to be becoming a little bit less competitive in South Africa relative to other African countries. Is this a major concern, and how serious is this trend of companies moving into the rest of Africa at the expense of South Africa?
We need to open the market up a bit. We are losing market share to the rest of the continent simply because those processes are not as regularized as South Africa is. As soon as we get the first megawatts onto the grid, hopefully that will be reason enough for government to sort of relax the regulations a bit more and allow for more competitiveness within the bidding process, because right now there are a number of smaller bidders, smaller developers who just cannot get into the market because the costs are prohibitive consideration. And we're seeing decisions being driven from a tax perspective a lot of times rather than being driven from a purely South African regional project-driven perspective. But you know, the guys are utilising the double taxation treaties that are in place, and I think that's extremely important to understand. You've got to look at these projects holistically.
When it comes to the projects, is it a lot of international investors that are looking northwards, or is it just South African companies?
Interestingly enough, within our processes, within any given project, you will find at least 60% of the project being held by foreign entities, the remaining 40% by South African entities, local communities. A lot of the international developers have come into South Africa, set a base, and are now looking to spread to spread their footprint within the continent. I don't think we would be losing market share to the continent because the continent itself is hungry for energy. We need to ensure that this rolls out as a continent, but what we are finding is that a lot of international players, a lot of South Africans, are refusing to play within the local program because the opportunities are better elsewhere, better by means of higher tariffs, but also better in the sense that the input costs are not as much. The cost of bidding is not as much.